people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest from Let's Go Management. There appears to have been a last-minute opponent change. According to Let's Go, Thorslund will now face Mary Romero, a common opponent between her and Serene Satine, who sustained a cut on Friday in sparring and has not been cleared to fight. We only found out last night. Been a stressful 24 hours, but we have worked hard as a team to get there.
She dodged the bullet.
I'm going to take the story at face value. I won't get into conspiracy theories, even though I didn't like Serene Satine's chances, and a part of me questions as to whether or not she really got cut, or did her and her team get cold feet at the last minute, decide to pull out.
They weren't going to win in Denmark.
I never liked Serene Satine's chances in that fight. She's not as experienced as Dina Thorslund, and stylistically, it's not a fight that would have done Serene any favors. So whether you believe the story or you don't, Serene Satine dodged a bullet. Mary Romero will be standing in her place. Mary Romero, who sports a professional record of 9 wins with 4 losses, no draws, 2 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 13 professional bouts.
First time for everything.
Short notice opponents have a way of upsetting the established balance, upsetting the apple cart. Short notice opponents, late replacements, have a way of surprising a fighter, in this instance a champion, on the premise that that's not who they were training for or what they were training for.
If you were training for an orthodox fighter, but you end up with a southpaw, you were training for a pure boxer, a mover, but you end up with a pressure fighter or a boxer puncher.
You were supposed to be facing a speedster, instead you end up with a brawler. It's the element of surprise. It's the sudden change that sometimes makes late replacements haphazard, banana skins in some instances, though I don't think that will be the case this weekend, even though Mary Romero is a late replacement for Serene Satine, who is many years younger.
There are similarities between them. They're both mid-range to inside volume punchers. They're both pressure fighters. Now, Mary, to her credit, she's broken character once or twice,
showed another layer of her game once or twice, but for the most part, when she's fighting her fight, she's coming forward, stepping into her punches and bringing other punches over, stringing combinations together. At her very best, Mary Romero is a pressure fighter.
and that's what Dina Thorslund was training for. She was training for a pressure fighter, a mid-range to inside volume puncher.
So I don't think there will be any surprises. No, I don't think this weekend in Denmark those two alphabet titles and the Ring Magazine belt will change hands. I anticipate that Dina Thorslund will remain unified Ring Magazine and lineal champion at 118 pounds, because where Mary Romero is a pressure fighter, Dina Thorslund is a boxer puncher, an adjustable one, a malleable one.
Boxer punchers have a tactical edge over pressure fighters because they can box when they need to and they can punch when they need to.
It's just the right amount of offense and just the right amount of defense to fight that pressure fighter off when you need to fight them off and create space, move around when you need to move around. It's balancing between the two that gives a boxer puncher the edge over a pressure fighter, whereas pressure fighters, most of the time, they only got one gear and they're really at their best, only at their best, when they're coming forward, throwing punches in bunches. Mary throws punches in bunches, though she is many years older than Dina Thorslund, punches wider than Dina Thorslund.
She can get caught in between.
Combinations are a bit disorganized, those flurries. She can get caught in between the shots, in between the punches. I remember when she fought Ellie Scottney.
Catfish.
Ellie got in with a couple of good body shots, and Ellie's not known for power. She's good. She's very good, very talented, but she's not known for power. And I remember that when she fought Mary Romero, she actually went to her body a couple of times. Mary didn't like it, in spite of Ellie not being all that big a puncher, whereas
Dina's a big puncher.
she goes to the body. She regularly goes to the body. Her signature punch is a leaping left hook to the body. So if Ellie Scottney can hurt you to the body, Dina Thorslund can hurt you to the body.
I think Dina's gonna win.
She's going to stay this division's Unified Ring Magazine and lineal champion this weekend in spite of Mary Romero being a late replacement, and in spite of some late replacements being banana skins. I don't think that'll be the case this weekend because she was training for a pressure fighter, and that's what Mary Romero is. She's a pressure fighter.
Stylistically, Dina has the edge, and tack on that Dina's younger.
Fresher set of legs. Fresher set of reflexes. Punch for punch, I actually think Dina punches harder than Mary Romero.
She's bouncy.
Bouncing back and forth, in and out of range. Very good in and out game from Dina Thorslund. So as stated, I don't think the belts are going to change hands this weekend. I think Dina's going to stay this division's Unified Ring Magazine and lineal champion. Men's super lightweight news, you may have heard already that Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia is to be held at the Barclays Center in New York, which caught a lot of people by surprise because, Devin Haney, he's from Vegas, and Ryan's from the West Coast, the Victorville Vulva, as he's often dubbed.
Big Apple's not the boxing town that it used to be.
The highly anticipated matchup between the WBC super lightweight champion Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia was already a done deal. The fight was announced on February 9th, and a viral showdown between the fighters ensued in a fiery fashion immediately after in Las Vegas during Super Bowl festivities.
It seemed staged to me, but either way, they've got a job to do. They've got to sell this fight, so they sold it.
It was believed that the bout would be staged in Las Vegas as well, Haney's adopted hometown, but on Wednesday, Hall of Fame fighter turned promoter Oscar De La Hoya revealed that the showdown will be staged at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, an odd sight for this particular fight.
Barclays Center used to be the site of a lot of PBC shows, a lot of PBC fights, Gervonta Davis fights.
But as stated, New York is not the same fight town that it used to be in previous eras of boxing, so one is left to wonder, why do a fight between a guy from Vegas and a guy from the West Coast in New York, in the opposite coast? This is what veteran boxing scribe Dan Raphael had to say about that.
The problem with Las Vegas for this particular date is April 20th is in very close proximity on the calendar to May 4th, which is the date that PBC has blocked out for Canelo Alvarez. And if anybody knows anything about venue deals and how they work, the promoter and the host usually have a blackout period before their big event, because they don't want somebody taking an event, a venue, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. Usually it's about 3 weeks, I think, ahead of their event, which will cannibalize their potential ticket sales. So the PBC people, from my understanding, did not want to allow that fight to be in either the MGM Grand or the T-Mobile Arena, which are the two main arenas that the MGM folks control. Mandalay Bay also, but that's a much smaller arena, so it probably wouldn't be large enough to host this fight. That's only about 10, 12,000 packed in. T-Mobile is 20, MGM is 18, so they got blocked out by the PBC having that date.
So the short version is that the PBC took up all the dates and froze them out. They don't want that event clashing with what could be their own event in May, presumably a Canelo Alvarez fight, if Canelo stays with them, which is a different conversation entirely.
So perhaps if not for that, they would have done it in Vegas.
Instead, they're doing this in New York. It was also announced that an open to the public press tour is set to begin next week. Proceedings will kick off at the Palladium Times Square in New York on February 27th and at the Avalon in Hollywood, California on February 29th. The fight will stream on DAZN and be promoted by Golden Boy Promotions in association with Matchroom Boxing and the fighters' promotional outfits. Trust me when I say, you don't want to miss these press conferences. Garcia wrote on social media Wednesday, I have a surprise for New York during the press conference. A new teammate.
Ryan Garcia, he's very good at promoting himself. He's got a knack for that. One can argue that he's a better promoter than he is a boxer.
Yeah, he is more prepared to sell this fight than he's prepared to win it, because I don't think he's going to win it. I think he's going to go in there, he's going to get dominated. Marquee matchups have been missing in New York as of late. The last time the Barclays Center hosted a boxing event was in October of 2022, when Deontay Wilder knocked out Robert Helenius in one round. The nearby Madison Square Garden in in Manhattan, long billed as the Mecca of boxing, also did not host a boxing event in the main arena last year.
Why did boxing move away from the tri-state area? New York used to be a fight town.
Well, I think what changed is for the promoters and the powers that be, it got more expensive to do fights in New York. That's what it was. Something to do with insurance. Insuring the fighter and safety provisions and things of that nature.
It's more expensive to do fights in New York now.
Despite of that, Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia will now head to the Empire State looking to settle the score surrounding their years-long rivalry. They've gone 3 for 3 against each other during their amateur careers, but this ain't the amateurs. This is the pros. And in the pro ranks, Devin Haney is miles ahead of Ryan Garcia, having shared the ring with the likes of former champions Jojo Diaz and Jorge Linares, Vasyl Lomachenko, a reigning champion, and George Kambosos, another reigning champion, in Regis Prograis at super lightweight.
Devin's quality of competition is head and shoulders above Ryan's, and that matters. That's important because that tells you where Devin is and how bankable he is as a fighter, based on not just how he looks, but who he's fighting when he looks that way.
You often hear about the eye test, the quote-unquote eye test in the sport of boxing, how it is a fighter looks. But who the fighter's fighting is just as, if not more important, as how he looks.
Because he can go in there and look great against no-hopers and ham and eggers, C, D, and E level fighters. He might look great fighting them.
But how does he look if you step him up in class? How does he look against a former champion or a current reigning champion? In that arena, Devin Haney's quality of competition is head and shoulders above Ryan's.
It's a wonder Ryan is even taking this fight because I didn't think he was going to.
What is being billed as a Golden Boy Promotions show, it's Golden Boy at the helm of promotion for this fight. Ryan has so accepted it, and it has taken me by surprise, though the only way that I can interpret it, based on where he is in his career and how he's been looking, is that he's cashing out. He's choosing to make as much money as he can, as fast as he can, while he can.
He did say years ago that he wants to retire from the sport of boxing at, what was it, 26, 27?
Guess he's just here for a good time, but not a long one. Barclays Center, what was the site of many a PBC fight in previous years, not so much in recent ones. They seem to have relocated to Minneapolis, to the Armory.
Been doing a lot of fights out of there.
As stated, the reason New York ain't the same fight town that it used to be is because it got more expensive over time to do fights there. So if you're gonna do a fight there, it needs to be a big one. And this is a big one.
Haney versus Garcia is gonna draw a crowd.
Even if it feels like it should be in Vegas ideally, or somewhere in Los Angeles, they're doing it in New York. And I think it's going to do numbers.
The Golden Boy.
Irrespective of the outcome, I said it in my previous video, I have the sneaking suspicion Golden Boy Promotions is about to have a renaissance. And finally, in men's super middleweight and light heavyweight news, I'm sure that most of you have heard by now, Mauricio Suleiman, the WBC's president himself, took to his social media to announce he's very proud of a sensational fight which the World Boxing Council has approved to sanction for the interim light heavyweight title fight between David Benavidez, the former champion, former WBC champion, and Oleksandr Gvozdyk, the former WBC champion at light heavyweight. Wish the best of luck for both champions.
Guess that rules him out of a Canelo fight.
It most certainly does, and that has left us with a lot to unpack.
What does this mean?
It means that David and his team don't want to wait around anymore. If they're finally going up to light heavyweight after all these years, when they're already interim champion at super middleweight, it's because they don't think they're going to get the Canelo Alvarez fight, and they want to move on.
That is what Samson Lukowicz said after all. David's promoter, he said Canelo versus Benavidez doesn't look to be happening at any point this year. So if it isn't, why would you stay at super middleweight? Why would you keep boiling down to 168?
Doesn't make sense. For a guy who's been at super middleweight as long as David, a guy who's as big as David, why would you keep killing yourself to make that weight? And make no mistake, even though they haven't said it, he's been killing himself to make that weight. This guy must walk around at somewhere just north of 200 pounds.
Come on.
Come on, nothing. This guy must rehydrate to at least 200 pounds the night of a fight. And in between fights, he's got to be walking around just north of 200. I don't imagine the David Benavidez fans like the sound of this because they would prefer that he stay there and play the waiting game, fighting cream puffs all the while, playing it safe, while he's killing himself to make that weight. And I've long maintained that he shouldn't do that, and you shouldn't make your career all about one guy, just one guy, even if that one guy is the cash cow, even if he is undisputed champion and the biggest name at the weight, the biggest name at the sport. You still shouldn't make your own career all about one fighter because you can't control him.
No one can!
Not you, not the World Boxing Council, not the fans. He's gotten himself into a position where he can do whatever the fuck he wants and everybody else is forced to play along. So if you want a legacy for yourself and fans of your own, marquee value of your own, you gotta do something else. You can't just wait around. It appears that David finally got the memo, and he's fighting former champion Alexander Gvozdyk.
What do I think about this fight?
I think Alexander Gvozdyk is a bigger, better, and more challenging opponent than any opponent that David has fought so far. That includes Anthony Durrell, Caleb Plant,
Demetrius Andrade.
I think he's better than those guys. I think that if you put any one of those guys in the ring with Alexander Gvozdyk, he would beat them all. Even now in his mid to late 30s, he would beat them.
You see what he did to Adonis Stevenson way back when?
He can box. Yeah, he can box. He can box a bit, but he can punch. He can punch also. He's a harder puncher than a Demetrius Andrade, a harder puncher than a Caleb Plant, a harder puncher than an Andre Durrell.
Was it Anthony?
Yeah, he's better than him, too. He's better than a lot of them. Alexander Gvozdyk is the exact kind of opponent that I've always wanted to see David Benavidez in the ring with. Somebody who can box and somebody who can punch.
Somebody with some size. Oftentimes, when David Benavidez walks into the ring, he walks in there with an obvious height advantage, reach advantage, weight advantage, size advantage. But can he stay the Mexican monster? Can he stay the same guy when the guy opposite the ring is the same size as him?
Gvozdyk ain't no little guy, and this is a seasoned light heavyweight, a former champion.
Do you think he can beat David?
Does he still have enough to beat an unbeaten up-and-comer like a David Benavidez? Well, that's the question, isn't it? That's why we tune in. You say that this is uncharted territory for David Benavidez.
But at the same time, Gvozdyk is getting older.
I like this fight more than most other fights that were available to David at 168, and that includes a David Morrell fight, because David Morrell, while he's big and he's young and he's strong, he's not as proven as a Gvozdyk.
Looks like I got 10 fights.
He's never been a world champion. He's never shared the ring with the likes of an Adonis Stevenson or an Artur Beterbiev.
It's the only guy that beat Alexander.
Now, David Benavidez will get the chance to prove whether or not he's of the same ilk as an Artur Beterbiev by boxing that same fighter. And if he wins, he lines himself up for Artur. Rather, the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol, the winner of this fight becomes WBC interim champion.
At light heavyweight.
Not only do I like the fight, I love the fight because for the first time, there's an air of intrigue in association with the Benavidez fight. The majority of those fights have been foregone conclusions.
You knew he was going to win.
We all did. For the first time, he's in there with someone who stands a legitimate chance of beating him.
But that's what it takes.
You gotta roll the dice. You gotta take risks sometimes to get somewhere, because sitting at 168 and playing it safe, where has that gotten you?
And I'm sure there are a lot of people that are still cackling about Canelo, but none of that would have helped David's situation.
No amount of Twitter tweets or YouTube comments, no amount of interviews from Team Benavidez would have changed anything. If you know you're not going to get him this year, you have to do something, and he's doing it.
This is a fight I can get behind.